to Jan, who's going to be telling us all about the Sandbox evaluation framework.
Yes, thank you, John. Thank you for having me here. I think today is my second day on the board. So excited about the next 2 years and being able to make an impact on whatever pathway and direction we plan to take. So today I will real quick do a recap of the Sandbox evaluation framework, which has been adopted in a V1 draft. And then we actually did a test run with Venex Security. I don't think they're on the call today, but shout out to them. It was really interesting to see it put to practice. However, in order for the framework to gain, I think, widespread adoption in the industry, we need to make it easier to take the test and get more adoption in general, so that it becomes more useful. So that's why at the second half of the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about a proposal that I have, which is to build a platform that actually implements the test framework and makes it easier for vendors and testers to onboard their test cases and or have their solution, i.e. Sandbox, threat detection, whatever it is, tested in a compliant way. So real quick on myself, I won't spend too much time here because it's more about the framework, but ultimately I have a lot of Sandbox experience. Originally worked at Joe Security and founded my own company, got acquired by CrowdStrike. We built an interesting product there called Falcon X, which was combining sandboxing and threat intelligence and threat hunting into a single experience. It's an interesting approach because the sandbox is generating IOCs, it's extracting embedded IOCs like an IP address, a hash, a URL, a domain, and then using threat intelligence services, you can enrich that, you can associate metadata, or you can go and hunt and get a bigger picture of the campaign and the cluster behind the attack. Anyway, I did found another startup which got acquired by OPSWAT, which is around implementing sandboxing using a new type of emulation. So we interpret code, we build virtual file systems, virtual OS layers, and then try to use emulation as a more scalable approach to extract IOCs at scale. Yeah, and that was actually the reason why we tried to push for the Sandbox evaluation framework, because ultimately there is a very diverse landscape of sandbox vendors and technologies, and so shedding some light and standardizing this makes sense, I think, also for customers, and it's also attractive new revenue stream for the testers. Before I dive into the framework, just a quick recap for those unfamiliar. In general, a sandbox is a isolated environment that you can use to safely, in quotes, detonate, that's the term the Americans like to use, files or access a web URL and then basically monitor the behavior. A really difficult problem in the sandbox world is to actually detonate the file, because a lot of samples are aware that they're being monitored in a sandbox, and so they show different behavior or they don't show any behavior at all. So over the course of the last, I'd say, almost 20 years now of sandbox development, it's been really difficult to get samples to properly execute. One thing that we've encountered is really customers want to buy a sandbox, but they don't know what features really matter. Like, I'll give an example. A traditional sandbox using a virtual machine might have an interactive desktop I can click around. That's interesting for a SOC analyst in an incident response motion maybe, but it may not be that useful as a feature if I'm running the sandbox in, I don't know, an automated email gateway solution. And so what we tried to do is we tried to categorize features, and then based on the use case that we want to implement, we give different weights and different scores to these feature sets. It'll make more sense in a second. Yeah, this is pretty much a placeholder slide. we're trying to kind of show the value proposition of why we need a test framework. Obviously, we want to have a fair process. We want to have transparency. We want to have also results that are comparable and fair. And so that's why we need the use case driven evaluation, because if I'm comparing Sandbox vendor A to B, I want to do that comparison within the use case that I'm looking to implement. Whether it's, I don't know, critical infrastructure, air-gapped environments, it's a SaaS play, it's based on volume, it's where am I in the pipeline as well? Is it at the early stage, at the perimeter, or is it in the late stage when I'm reacting to an incident where forensic features are more important, etc. What we did in our framework is we've defined a couple example use cases. Obviously, testers will be able to change that, but we recommended weights for different sets of features. So for example, we have the feature category anti-evasion, which could mean that the solution is able to properly camouflage the virtual environment. For example, a lot of malware will check for disks size, total memory, resolution of the desktop, wear and tear artifacts, potentially all kinds of things. And so ultimately building out a diverse and broad set of test cases is going to be critical to properly evaluate these feature sets. And then based on the use case, certain feature sets will be more important or less important. And so this heat map is just an example representation of how we scored for the use cases that you see on the left side, the feature sets on the x-axis. Yeah, obviously, certain vendors will be stronger in certain aspects. For example, the emulation-based approach may not be ideal for deep memory forensics. There's no volatility integration. There's no full system memory dump. There might be certain gaps on the attack chain. I can't go as deep, but maybe I don't care because my use case is detection, right? And so what we try to do is we're also trying to visualize the results, in this case in a, I think it's a radar chart. And we're trying to build tools around being able to switch between the use cases and see different visualizations. But again, it succeeds or dies with the number of vendors participating. There's no point in having an evaluation of a single vendor. So we really want to start building and refining out the framework and the ability to implement the framework in an easy way to motivate other vendors to participate. One new tool that we developed, which is available as an open source, is this visualization tool. It's a very simple front-end, lightweight web app that you can basically plug in test results in a standard JSON format, and then you can visualize it. You can play around also with the weights per KPI or feature category, and then see how it will. I can't do a live demo, unfortunately, today, but it updates automatically. And so when you play with the weights and the scale, you'll see a live update in the web app. As mentioned, we did the first test run with Venex Security. You can see the results in this blog that's published here. I thought it was interesting also because this test was performed using AI-generated samples and samples from the wild list. Yeah, that just as a for your information, hoping for more adoption here, obviously. One way to improve the adoption also from the tester perspective is, I think, creating a, I've coined this the test harness platform. And so the idea is to create a generic framework that has a plug and play architecture. So every test case is a basically a configuration with a test sample with the expected input and output, basically. And then also we have vendor connectors. So it's a little bit like a SOAR platform, I guess. We have little plugins for Sandbox vendors, but this is exactly how it's meant to be implemented. So for example, we would go to a public open sandbox that has an API, and then look at the report structure, and then you basically have to define in your vendor connector, where do I find certain fields in the output, because every vendor will have a different structure, so that we can kind of have a standard mapping to a standard format, and then we can use these test cases to do that automated evaluation. And so the idea here is, once we create vendor connectors with the help of the vendors, or we do it ourselves, then all we need to do is build out a broad set of test cases with the help of the testers. Hopefully they will share some, or we'll have to create them ourselves. And then ultimately I can, in a fully automated way, perform a full evaluation of any vendor connector that is present using those vendor connectors, and then generate the scores, the reports, and then we can visualize that in the web app, which could be hosted by AMTSO. Yeah, there's a whole paper in the working group of the Sandbox on the test harness platform. This is just a small preview of a data flow and component architecture of the components. But yeah, we would have to deep dive that, and we're still in the process of getting feedback and refining that, obviously. This also a suggestion for the roadmap. I think, given that it always takes a little bit of time, everybody's busy with their own corporate responsibilities, obviously, that I think we can finalize and plan in detail the test harness platform, and maybe also where we want to put the visualization tool on the AMTSO website, etc. This year. Looking forward to the conference as well. And then we'll form an engineering team. I think we can definitely support this effort from our end, and then we'll gauge if other working group members are willing to invest some engineering resources in this as well, to then build like the V1 of the platform. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of effort in building out the test cases and implementing these vendor connectors. And then I think what we can do is a public test. So we basically call it out and then start testing all the public sandboxes, any commercial vendor that wants to participate as well, and then create some buzz around that. And then, I mean, hopefully we can be quicker than this. It seems a bit stretched out, but being a little bit conservative here, yeah, then hopefully launch that thing by end of next year. Yeah, so this is just a recap of what I think we need to do. Obviously, we need to first define exactly the architecture and the format of the vendor connector and test cases, etc. Implement it, validate it in a pilot phase, and then start drumming the rolling the drums, and then publishing it and seeing how the feedback is in the community. And then I think it can be an exciting new new system that AMTSO owns and uses actively. So that's basically my talk. I think I'm a little fast, but maybe there's a bunch of questions, and so we have a lot of time for questions.